Alright, so there's my resistors, and they all are 300 ohm resistors. So they're all measuring between like 299 and 305. The reason why there's variation is because all resistors, when they're manufactured, they have some tolerance. And for instance, right here it says 300 ohm 5%. So they're telling you it's 5% tolerance. So that means when this was manufactured, if you took 5% of 300 ohms, which would be 15 ohms, this resistor could be as low in resistance as 285 ohms or as high in resistance as 315 ohms. Did I do that math right? Because I did it in my head, but I think I did it right because, let's see, 10% of 300 is 30, half of that is 15. Yeah. Okay, so who cares? Alright, get a little precarious tripod set up so that I can show you. What I want to show you is, let's see if we can get the meter in the camera view here. Alright, so you should be able to see the resistance on the meter there. And you'll notice that when I measure one of these resistors, it's 307 ohms, and if I measure the one behind it, it's 306 ohms. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the leads in a way so that I'm actually bridging the two, which will be putting them in parallel. And you watch what happens to the resistance reading. It goes down to 157.5, so it halves. And then if well, I'm not going to be able to do that. The leads aren't long enough. But if I put 3 of them in, it'll drop even lower. So the more resistances I put in parallel, the lower the resistance goes. So I should be able to make something work out of this this setup. Alright, the first test I did was I just basically held this on the wire with the wire for the idiot light, and then touched it to the other end of where the idiot light's hooked up, essentially putting this in parallel with the light. The light got slightly dimmer, but it did not go out. So that's good. Now the question is, will this allow enough current to flow to excite the alternator when I start it? So I've got to rig this up a little bit better. Okay, just tack soldered on a couple of wires, little pigtails, so I can do my testing. And then once I've figured out what combination of resistors works for me, then I'll neaten it up and do a really good job of soldering it all together. Alright, I'm all wired up and ready to do my first test to see if it'll self-excite once I start it. And guess what? The engine shutdown cable or linkage or something is frozen because I can't get it to go back in. Isn't that just wonderful? Alright, well, I'm hoping it's just water went down along here and got in there and froze. And if that's the case, maybe if I heat this rod up right here, I might be able to get it to melt, break free. Well, I heated this rod up and it didn't do anything. Then I realized if water ran down here, it probably would go to a low point in the cable down around here. So I actually heated up this plate really hot, and that warmed the cable just enough so it broke free. So I'll have to remember that trick because I'm sure that's going to happen again. But right now it's working. Okay. So now let's try and start it. I got the throttle up a little bit. Okay, I need to get a little fluid in there, I think. Now let's try the electric preheater. See what happens. Alright, we'll go with the ether. Alright. Alright, so the light's still on, so 300 ohms ain't gonna do it. Let's see if I bridge in another one and drop it to 150, what happens. I'm just gonna leave the motor running and try and hold this in position. I get the light facing me. some RPM. No change. I cut right to the chase and bridge 4 of them in parallel. So I've stripped some wire and intertwined it through the holes on the end here, and I'm going to just tack solder it to each one. Again, this is just a temporary setup. Well, I'm certainly not proud of my solder work here. It's pretty sloppy. But again, this is just a temporary setup. So now I should have about 75 ohms here. Alright, my light's staying on, so that's good. Now let's start it, see what happens. Still not working. Got something short across there. I do have one resistor left. Also makes no difference. And of course, if I short this out, there you go. Momentarily shorted out, light goes out, and meter shows charge. Gotta get a lower resistance than 75 ohms to make this work. Well, I just measured the resistance when I add that 5th resistor in, and it goes down to 60 ohms. So I know I need lower than 60 ohms. You know, I was aiming for 30 because some of the circuits I had seen use a 30 ohm resistor, so that's I think where I want to be. Can't go too low because then the light won't light at all. What'll happen is the current will just all want to flow through the resistor, and very little will flow through the light, and the lamp won't light when the engine is off, or if you have a problem. So anyways, let's see. At this point, I mean, if I tear open any more TVs, the odds of me finding the right size resistor are kind of slim. So maybe we'll take a ride to Radio Shack. Well, back from Radio Shack. They didn't have a terribly large assortment, but they did have some power resistors. Closest I could come was these 50 ohms, because take 2 of them, put them in parallel, I'll get 25 ohms. All the other combinations that they had there weren't going to work if I put them in series or parallel. They are either too low or too high in resistance. So we went with these, and as luck would have it, they come as a 2-pack and $2.19 plus tax. Not bad. Kind of makes me feel silly going through all the trouble of digging these out of that TV set. But anyways, hopefully this will work. Alright, just twisted the ends, pigtailed them together, and now let's go try it. Alright, I've got it in the circuit, and my idiot light is lighting. So let's start it up. Oh, in case you didn't notice, it's snowing. But let's see if we can't get this at least test run done. I get the throttle down low, bring it up higher. That's interesting, the light went out for a second but came right back on. Working. Well, now this is strange. Now even shorting it like before doesn't want to get the alternator to kick in. Something has changed. Well, how about that? The alternator has stopped working. And the only thing that's changed since it was working before I left to go get the resistors and I came back is that it started snowing. And I'm wondering whether or not things are just getting wet inside that alternator and causing problems. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of right now. Because nothing else, I haven't changed any wiring or anything, and now all of a sudden it doesn't work. Well, seeing how the weather's getting worse, I think I'm going to quit. Try it after everything dries out and see what happens.